When the soul begins to loosen itself from the old life, almost no one notices it right away. Not because the sign is weak, but because it doesn't arrive as a word or a clear thought or a sudden revelation. It arrives as a feeling. A quiet, soft, uncomfortable feeling that grows slowly until it becomes impossible to ignore. Maybe you felt it before. That strange impression that something inside you no longer fits the place it always occupied. As if an invisible part of you when you believed was asleep started moving, trying to breathe, trying to expand in a way you can't fully explain. You can't point at it and say, this is it, but you can feel that something is shifting. Something is loosening. Something is stepping away from what it used to be. And that is exactly where everything begins, in the silence that comes before change. In the discomfort no one teaches you how to interpret. In the emptiness that shouldn't be there, yet is. And for some reason, it keeps calling your attention. You try to follow your routine, try to act normal, try to convince yourself that everything is the same, that everything is fine, that maybe it's just tiredness, just stress, just another strange day that will eventually pass. But this time, it doesn't pass. This time, the feeling returns, and returns again, and returns stronger. It's as if your own body were trying to warn you, but you still don't know about what. And then something curious starts happening. Small things in your daily life begin to lose meaning. Conversations that once held your interest now feel empty. Places you used to go without thinking now create a strange inner resistance. The relationships you carried almost on autopilot begin to feel heavier in a way you never noticed before. There's a subtle discomfort, a silent distancing, as if you were walking to the same life, but from a completely different point of view. As if you had stepped outside of yourself and for the first time were seeing everything from a new angle, almost uncomfortable, almost too revealing. And when that happens, you try to ignore it. It's natural, because the truth is, no one likes to admit that their own soul is moving. No one likes to realize that what once supported their life no longer serves them, no longer fits, no longer aligns with who they are becoming. But the more you try to convince yourself that nothing is changing, the more the change presses you from the inside. It's like a knot that begins small, but slowly unravels at the same time that it tightens. It's not destruction. It's separation. It's the soul loosening itself in the old life, and that always hurts more than any physical transformation. You start noticing things you once ignored. You feel a strange pull toward being alone, toward withdrawing, toward observing your own mind with more care. It's as if something were pushing you inward, as if the depths were calling you, almost whispering. And still you resist, because no one wants to dive into the unknown. No one wants to admit that the life they've lived for so long is beginning to lose its shine, not because it's bad, but because its cycle is ending. And this is exactly the point where most people get confused, because it's not sadness, it's not depression, it's not lack of motivation. It's something much harder to translate. It's as if the soul were undoing old ties, unraveling ideas you carried for years, dissolving identities that once made sense but now feel small, tight, almost suffocating. As if the whole emotional structure you built were being reorganized without your control, not to hurt you, but to free you. And this process always begins with this strangeness, this emotional displacement you can't name. And little by little, it evolves into something deeper. You start to feel that time is changing its rhythm. The days pass differently. The things that once held you now exhaust you. The emotions you used to push down begin to rise back to the surface, demanding attention, demanding presence, as if something were breaking inside, and at the same time, something new were trying to be born. This is the moment when the first great test arrives: doubt. Doubt is always the first door to awakening. You begin questioning things you never questioned before. You begin looking at your life and wondering if you truly chose everything in it, or if you simply followed the current. You start noticing patterns, repetitions, cycles you tolerated without realizing how much they were draining your energy. And when doubt arrives, it never comes alone. It drags reflection with it, pulls presence with it, pulls awareness with it. And everything you were trying to avoid begins to appear with almost uncomfortable clarity. And here's an important point: the soul doesn't detach from the old life all at once. It releases itself layer by layer. Each layer brings a memory, a fear, a habit, an old belief that needs to be left behind. And every layer that falls makes you lighter, more sensitive, more conscious, but also more vulnerable. Because to receive the new, you must lose the old. And loss, even when it's liberating, always brings pain. You begin to feel like you're being pulled into a deeper place inside yourself. Something like a slow descent, a gradual approach to the center of who you really are. This descent is not comfortable. It requires you to see what you've always avoided seeing. It requires you to listen to what you've always tried to silence. It requires you to acknowledge the parts of yourself that were hidden, forgotten, abandoned. The soul only loosens when you're ready to truly look at yourself, and that, by itself, is already a transformative process. But there comes a moment when everything intensifies, a turning point. And that point always arrives the same way, with a weight in your chest. Not a physical weight, but an emotional, mental, spiritual one. It's the sense that something is about to happen, but you don't know what. It's the feeling of change approaching. The threshold between the old and the new. You feel like you can't go back to the old life anymore, but you also don't know how to step into the new one. You stay stuck in the middle, in that confusing space where the soul has already loosened itself but hasn't yet stabilized in the new path. This is where many people give up. This is where many try to return to the life they once knew, try to recover old versions of themselves, try to fit back into structures that no longer make sense. But it doesn't work, because once the soul loosens, it doesn't go backward. It no longer accepts a small, repetitive, automatic life. It pushes you even if you don't want it to where you truly need to be. And the more you resist, the more life begins to send signals, sometimes soft, sometimes loud, to remind you that the old cycle is over. And then comes the hardest moment, the emptiness, the space between lives, the space between identities, the space between who you were and who you are becoming. This emptiness is frightening because it feels like loss, like confusion, like lack of direction. But in truth, it's preparation. It's like the silence before sunrise. It's not absence, it's transition. The soul needs a space to reorganize itself, to release what was stuck, to gather what is still useful, and understand the ground on which it will rebuild itself. In this emptiness, you begin to feel more sensitive, more intuitive, more connected to yourself. You start noticing synchronicities, signs, strange coincidences that seem to guide you. You start feeling an inner presence you never felt before, clarity, a strength, an intuition that doesn't come from your mind, but from something deeper, quieter, and more powerful. It's the soul rebuilding the path. And then comes a climax, the moment when, for the first time, you understand what is truly happening. When you realize you're not losing anything, you're being freed. That you're not falling apart, you're transforming. That you're not sinking, you're descending to the place where your true essence has always been. This is the moment when the soul stabilizes. This is when you understand that all that discomfort was actually your silent rebirth, the shedding of the old life, so that you could receive the new one. And when that understanding finally arrives, everything changes. The weight disappears. Clarity emerges. Intuition strengthens. Decisions become lighter. The path begins revealing itself. And you, for the first time in a long time, feel something you may have forgotten: peace. A peace that doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within. It comes from the soul finally aligned with what it has been trying to show you all along. If you're going through this, if any part of this video touched you in a way that's hard to explain, maybe it's because your soul is loosening from the old life too. Maybe you're closer to your awakening than you think. And now I really want to know, have you ever felt something like this? Have you noticed this silent calling, this inner shift, this feeling that something inside you is changing even if you're not sure what it is? Tell me in the comments. I read everything. If this video spoke to you, hit the like button to help this message reach more people. And if you feel you're going through this process and want to keep understanding what's happening inside you, subscribe to the channel. There's a lot of deep stuff coming. You're not alone in this. And your soul knows exactly where it's trying to take you.